friends, how will Disneyland getting new front gates added to each of its parks change your next visits to the Disneyland Resort for decades to come? And what Disneyland forward clues can we pull from this announcement? There are two major clues, and I think both of them are huge indications for things to come. And my favorite part, did this accidentally already get announced in 2022 due to sloppy concept art? Brickey here, answering all these questions and so many more as we're breaking down the huge announcement that Disneyland and DCA are both getting brand new main gates installed in front of both parks. So much to break down, and something that will nearly affect every single one of your visits for decades to come. This is truly exciting news. These gates have needed to be updated for such a long time. What do you say? Let's jump into today's adventure. Now, obviously, why this is huge news is that a faster way to get into the park will affect all of your visits. If the new gates are as efficient as promised, you'll be able to roll in and save several minutes, sometimes 10, 15 minutes, just trying to get into the park. And when there's those big Citizen of Disneyland community dates where this whole esplanade is full of people, we'll see it move even faster. It does seem that the project is scheduled to begin over at Disney's California Adventure and then work its way across the esplanade to Disneyland. Now, the only downside is while these projects are taking place, I would anticipate that it's going to be the slowest entry ever, but that's just one of those little pressure points for progress, right? Deal with the really, really slow construction time, knowing that good times and easy times are just on the horizon. Now, currently, cast members scan in guests at each of the individual turnstiles, and this creates a ton of problems because people no longer have physical paper tickets. You have guests that have magic bands, which this park is not fully equipped to take use of that technology, and then you have other guests that are trying to get in with a digital ticket on their phone. But one of the things that creates such a huge backup is what happens when people have their phone in their hand and nobody is talking to them or waiting on them. They go to other apps, other places on their phone. Then when it's their turn to scan in, guess what happens? They're not in the Disneyland app anymore. And to boot, the Disneyland app is incredibly confusing. Everything is well nested in. There's not a quick button to just get your pass to come up. And if there is, it's hard to see. Also, at Walt Disney World, they do a little thing where they let you put your magic key or your individual theme park ticket into your wallet on your Apple device, allowing people to scan in on their watch or their mobile phone by just clicking the side button, making it way easier. These gates are outdated, they back up quickly, and they are way too narrow for the evolution of society, where there's way more strollers, oversized strollers, wheelchairs, and scooters, personal vehicles that are coming in all the time. The gates have been a nightmare for quite some time, and Walt Disney World shows us an example of how it can be done better. Not to mention all the extra time it takes for cast members to take photos of guests. These lines just don't move quick enough for the amount of audiences that come to Disneyland. However, Walt Disney World out on the East Coast has a much more efficient system. They have fully committed to the Magic Band. They have way more turnstiles, and they have a cast member there just to assist you, not to answer all of your questions in these incredibly closed-in corridors that clog and block up very, very quickly and very often. It is effortless to go into Walt Disney World, and anyone who's ever been there and then comes to Disneyland is shocked how much extra energy it takes to get in at either of the two parks at the Disneyland Resort. It is absolutely shocking. My biggest takeaway when I went to Walt Disney World, I cannot believe how hard it is to get into Disneyland. And are we getting the Walt Disney World improved tap style? Well, the answer is no, but I wish. Because the tap style is so easy and efficient. And even though Walt Disney World system seems pretty flawless to me, it appears, according to Disneyland officials, they are going to use the similar system that they have out in Disneyland Paris. And when I went to Disneyland Paris, I was once again shocked at how easy it was to get into a Disney theme park. According to park officials, the gates will be similar to those that they use in Disneyland Paris, which will open after the guest's ticket, magic band, or magic key has been scanned in. Guests will likely scan in their own tickets and move forward. This will require fewer cast members, but there will be some cast members on hand to help guests that are needed with admission media. All tickets will still require an accompanying guest photo. Another huge advantage to these new gates is that they will be much wider, making it easier for strollers to get in there, creating easier ADA compliance, and just making it easier for everyone that we don't have to wait for two cast members to figure out which one's gonna open up the space in the middle so the stroller or wheelchair or scooter can go through there. Yeah, it's been a mess for quite some time, and it looks like this is gonna get resolved within the next year. Don't leave me locked out of the gate. Make sure you subscribe to Hey Brickey and help me keep making all of these fun videos, breaking down the Disney news in an interesting way where we can try to learn from the projects they're doing today what their plans are for tomorrow. Thank you so much for subscribing to Hey Brickey and going on this journey with me. Now back to this exciting news about Disneyland finally getting those new front gates. And hey, if this is something that you have wanted to happen for a long time, hit that thumbs up. But it's hard to talk about Disneyland gates without talking about another huge hassle that Disneyland has that Walt Disney World doesn't have at all. So if you've been to Walt Disney World, you're thinking what I'm thinking. What about a new security system? Because the Disneyland security system is so painful compared to the effortless system that they have out at Walt Disney World. So unfortunately, but maybe fortunately, Disneyland has announced nothing about a new security system, but let me share with you why I think this might be our first big Disneyland Forward clue in this new main gate announcement. If, as a part of Disneyland Forward, the eastern end of the park is going to get blown out, a new parking structure is going to get built on the other end of Harbor, where I predicted last year will become the main entryway from the east where all guests will get funneled through. That means that security will be on the other side of Harbor. Now, if you're curious what they would do with the land behind me and why this is a big deal, make sure you watch my Disneyland Forward series where I broke down exactly what this would mean. And believe it or not, this ties into why the worst two lands at DCA and Disneyland, Hollywood Studios and Tomorrowland, are at a complete dead standstill because they're tied into this as well. Because if you think about it, if all of this is going to get moved, why would you put a brand new permanent security structure in there? Disneyland knows that the main gates of each of the parks are going nowhere. Those are going to stay forever. However, everything around here is to be determined. So therefore, no security coming in, I believe, is a very good sign that there's a potential of good things to come on the horizon. And the west end of Disneyland is also a moving target, considering that at one day, everything behind me could potentially be an expansion of Disneyland, coming from Critter Country, bringing people through a portal over into a new land existing right here. This area over on the western end of the Disneyland Resort, in between Mickey and Friends and the Disneyland Hotel, all of these security checkpoints have a very temporary vibe to them, which is because I believe they are a long-term temporary solution. But at some point, a better security system will have to arrive on the west end side. But obviously, that commitment to a permanent structure isn't going to come until they know the permanent placement of that structure. With so much changing in downtown Disney, a permanent structure will come somewhere at some point, but that's all to be determined. But they know that an improved security system has to come because they have a far superior one at Walt Disney World. And if you've ever been to Walt Disney World, you know how effortless it is to get into the parks out there and what a complete hassle and struggle it is to get into anywhere inside of the Disneyland Resort. I do believe this not being announced while they're doing one is a great sign of things to come. They don't know the permanent place. They don't know the permanent solution to where everything will go. Therefore, one thing at a time while they wait for everything else to develop. Just a theory. What do you think? Would love to know below. You think I'm jumping to a conclusion, or do you think this is one we can bet on? But let's look at how many gates are coming to see if we can discover another Disneyland Forward clue. This clue might be the most exciting one yet. But now let's break down exactly what both parks are going to be getting. DCA is scheduled to get 24 new automatic gates, 2 fixed manual gates, and 10 removable railings. Whereas Disneyland is going to get 38 new automatic gates, 4 fixed manual gates, and 6 removable railings. It's no surprise with the demand of Disneyland that it would get 14 more automatic gates as well as 2 more of the fixed gates, but probably doesn't need as many of the railings because I believe the railings will be for letting large crowds in and possibly also editing the parks or adjusting the parks to allow deliveries and major vehicles to come through the front end. Right now, the rough cost for this project is a little bit over $5 million, and we expect that DCA is going to get its gates first, and then the project will move across the Esplanade to Disneyland's main gate entrance. And the Grand Californian will be getting 3 new automatic gates as well as 1 fixed manual gate. Did you notice the clue that I'm picking up on? There's a permit filed for the front of DCA. There's also a permit filed for the front of Disneyland and the Grand Californian going into DCA, leaving one zone that doesn't have a permit filed yet. And that zone would be the gates at the monorail. Why would they be putting in new gates at 3 out of the 4 different entry points into Disneyland? Could it be that a Disneyland forward clue is they don't know for sure that this will always be the permanent entrance for the monorail to take folks into Disneyland? Because when you look at the concept artwork, it's a little ambiguous when you get to the area where the monorail station is currently. And I know that concept art should be taken with a grain of salt, but it is an exciting question to think about though. With there being no permit filed for the monorail gates, maybe it's coming something later, but maybe this is an indication or a clue that they're keeping all of their options open on the western end of the park. And that could mean a different way to get into the monorail, a different part where the monorail could take us, maybe a completely different monorail trip is all possible in the future. That's the fun of Disneyland Forward. We don't know, and it's so fun to try to predict. But I'm looking at this as an indication that something could be in the works for the future of the monorail in the absence of it not being a part of this initial project where they're already spending over $5.5 million. So I don't think it's a budget thing. I think it's a wait and see thing. Now, if you're curious what these new gates could look like, I believe that Disney may have accidentally released an image of them back in 2022 with some sloppy concept art that I covered on an episode of Update. If you look at this image showing gates going into downtown Disney, which is already bizarre, I wonder if the lines of communication got crossed. I wonder if they were just experimenting with concept art, but if you look, you can clearly see gates where guests would scan themselves in, and you even see what appears to be a cast member waiting to assist anyone that has any problem or issues. I don't know, could be a coincidence, but it's pretty funny that this concept art floated around in 2022, and now, almost 2 years later, we're hearing something about new gates coming to the park. Coincidence? I don't know, but I love this stuff. Now the big question is, will these turnstiles be saved? The structures around the turnstiles be saved? And will the iconic center gate, the one that meant so much to all of us during COVID, will that one be saved? This gate brings back a lot of memories for those of us that stood at it, wishing to be on the other side during 2020. Friends, if you're curious about the video I was teasing earlier, showing you how the eastern end of the park is going to have a new security zone and a new entryway, and how Tomorrowland and Hollywood Studios could all be a part of this plan, make sure you watch this video right here from my Disneyland Forward series, where I break down the exciting future of the eastern end of Disneyland. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you real soon at the front gate.